The first time Claire saw her, the world stopped spinning. At 47, standing in the cluttered staff room of Lincoln High, she felt her heart lurch. A reckless teenage kind of lurch she hadn't known in decades. Emily, the new art teacher, was laughing, her auburn hair catching the light like a painting, and Claire forgot how to breathe. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Claire had spent 22 years married to Tom, raising 2 daughters, Sophie and Mia, in a quiet Virginia suburb. She was the dependable English teacher, the one who graded essays late into the night, who baked for PTA meetings, who buried her own desires so deep she barely remembered they existed. But Emily, with her easy smile and paint-streaked fingers, cracked something open inside her. Something dangerous. Something true. Claire stood frozen, clutching a stack of ungraded papers, as Emily turned and met her gaze. "You must be Claire," Emily said, her voice warm like she'd known her forever. "I've heard you're the heart of this place." Claire managed a nod, her throat tight, her mind screaming. "This is not safe. You are not safe." She was a married woman. A mother. A teacher. Not someone who fell apart over a stranger's smile. That night, Claire sat at the kitchen table, her husband's snores echoing from upstairs. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that suffocates. She stared at the wedding ring on her finger, its gold dulled from years of wear, and wondered when it had started feeling like a shackle. Tom was a good man, steady, kind, predictable. They'd built a life together. A mortgage, family vacations, a routine that worked. But as she thought of Emily's laugh, her stomach twisted with a longing she couldn't name. The next morning, Claire avoided the staff room. She told herself it was nothing, just a fleeting moment. But by lunch, she found herself lingering outside Emily's classroom, watching through the window as Emily guided a student's hand with a paintbrush, her patience radiant. Claire's heart pounded. She was 47, not 17. This wasn't supposed to happen. Over the next few weeks, Claire and Emily became friends, tentative at first, then inseparable. They shared coffee during planning periods, swapped stories about their students, and laughed over the absurdity of faculty meetings. Emily was 46, single, openly lesbian, and unapologetically herself. She'd moved to Virginia from Seattle, chasing a quieter life after a messy breakup. "I needed a reset," she told Claire one afternoon, her eyes distant but soft. "Somewhere I could just be." Claire envied that freedom. She'd never questioned her life before, not really. She'd married Tom at 25 because it was what you did. Find a good man, settle down, start a family. Sophie, now 20, was in college studying biology. Mia, 17, was a high school senior, all sharp wit and big dreams. They were Claire's world. But Emily was starting to feel like a world too. One she didn't understand but couldn't stop exploring. One evening, after a long day of parent-teacher conferences, Emily invited Claire to her apartment for wine. "Just to decompress," she said, her smile teasing. Claire hesitated, her mind flashing to Tom waiting at home, to the dishes in the sink, to the life she was supposed to live. But she said yes. Emily's apartment was a riot of color. Canvases stacked against walls, books spilling from shelves, a cozy chaos that felt alive. They sat on the couch, glasses of Merlot in hand, and talked until midnight. Emily spoke of her childhood in Oregon, of coming out at 19, of the years spent searching for a place to belong. Claire listened, her chest aching, her own story spilling out before she could stop it. The years of feeling half alive, the nights spent wondering if this was all there was. "You deserve more than that," Emily said softly, her hand brushing Claire's. The touch was electric, and Claire pulled back, her breath catching. "I'm married," she whispered, more to herself than to Emily. But Emily didn't push. She just nodded, her eyes steady, and said, "You deserve to be happy, Claire. Whatever that looks like." That night, Claire drove home in a daze, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. She thought of her daughters, of the life she'd built, of the woman she'd been pretending to be. And for the first time she let herself imagine what it would be like to stop pretending. The next day, Claire sat Tom down at the kitchen table. Her heart was a drumbeat, loud and unsteady. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom looked at her, his brow furrowing. and she saw the man she'd loved for half her life. Solid, familiar, safe. But safety wasn't enough anymore. "I don't think I can do this anymore," she said, the words tearing at her. "I don't think I'm who I thought I was." Tom stared, his face a mix of confusion and fear. "What are you saying, Claire?" he asked, his voice tight. She took a breath, her hands shaking, and said the words she'd never dared to speak aloud. "I think I'm in love with someone else. A woman." The silence that followed was deafening. Tom's face crumpled, not with anger, but with a quiet devastation that cut deeper than any argument could. "Who are you?" he whispered, and Claire had no answer. She only knew she couldn't keep living a lie. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain. Tom moved out, renting a small apartment across town. Sophie and Mia were home for the holidays, and Claire dreaded telling them. She imagined their anger, their rejection, the way they might look at her like she was a stranger. But she couldn't hide anymore. Not from them. Not from herself. One evening, Claire sat her daughters down in the living room. The Christmas tree blinked in the corner, a mockery of normalcy. "There's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice trembling. Sophie, always the perceptive one, reached for her hand. "Mom, whatever it is, we love you," she said. Mia nodded, her eyes wide but steady. Claire took a deep breath and told them everything. Her feelings for Emily, the divorce, the truth she'd been afraid to face. When she finished, the room was quiet, but not the suffocating kind. Sophie squeezed her hand. "Mom," she said, her voice soft. "We just want you to be happy." Mia, ever blunt, added, "Yeah, and we're not idiots. We could tell you weren't yourself." Claire's eyes filled with tears. She'd spent months fearing this moment, imagining the worst. But her daughter's love was a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge. They weren't angry. They weren't afraid. They were proud. With her daughter's support, Claire felt a weight lift. But the world outside her home was less forgiving. Lincoln High was a small school in a conservative town, and whispers followed her like shadows. Teachers who once smiled at her in the halls now averted their eyes. Parents sent emails questioning her suitability to teach. Claire had spent years being the perfect teacher, the perfect mother, the perfect wife. Now she was a scandal. Emily was her anchor. They met after school in quiet corners of coffee shops, stealing moments between classes to talk, to laugh, to simply be. Emily's presence was a balm, soothing the raw edges of Claire's new reality. But it wasn't easy. Every touch, every glance, felt like a rebellion against the life she'd known. And yet it was a rebellion she craved. One afternoon, Claire found a note slipped into her mailbox at school, and signed, scrawled in Sharpie, "You're a disgrace." Her stomach churned, but she didn't tell Emily. She didn't want to taint what they had with the ugliness of judgment. Instead, she threw herself into her work, into her daughters, into the fragile hope of a future with Emily. Sophie and Mia became her fiercest defenders. Sophie, home for spring break, overheard a classmate's cruel remark about Mrs. Thompson's new lifestyle, and shut it down with a fierceness that made Claire's heart swell. Mia, still navigating high school, started wearing a rainbow pin on her backpack, a quiet act of solidarity that brought tears to Claire's eyes. But the pressure was relentless. The school board called a meeting to discuss community concerns. Claire sat in the back, her hands clasped tightly, as parents debated her right to teach. Some spoke of values, of tradition, of protecting their children. Others, a smaller but louder group, defended her, citing her years of dedication, her impeccable record. Emily sat beside her, her presence steady, but Claire could feel the weight of every stare. After the meeting, Claire broke down in Emily's car, her sobs raw and unfiltered. "I don't know if I can do this," she said, her voice muffled against Emily's shoulder. "I'm losing everything." Emily held her, her voice fierce. "You're not losing us. You're not losing yourself. And that's what matters." The next day, Claire walked into her classroom with her head high. She taught with a passion she hadn't felt in years, pouring her heart into every lesson. Her students noticed. One, a quiet girl named Lily, stayed after class to say, "You seem happier, Mrs. Thompson." "It's nice," Claire smiled, her throat tight, and realized Lily was right. Despite the chaos, she was starting to feel like herself. Emily and Claire's relationship deepened, but it wasn't without challenges. Claire struggled with guilt. Guilt for leaving Tom, for upending her daughter's lives, for daring to want more. Emily, too, carried scars from her past, her confidence masking a fear of being hurt again. They fought sometimes, small sparks of frustration over Claire's hesitation, Emily's impatience. But they always came back to each other, their love a quiet strength. One evening, Emily took Claire to a local art gallery, a rare night out. The gallery was small, tucked away in a corner of town, but it was alive with color and energy. Emily's paintings were on display, vibrant abstracts that seemed to pulse with emotion. Claire stood before one, a swirl of blues and golds, and felt tears prick her eyes. "This is how I see you," Emily said, her voice soft. "Bright, bold, beautiful." Claire kissed her then in front of strangers, and for the first time she didn't care who saw. But the world wasn't done testing them. A week later, Claire received a formal letter from the school board. Her contract was under review. The vague wording didn't hide the truth. She was being targeted. Panic clawed at her chest. Teaching was her life, her identity. Losing it would mean losing a part of herself she wasn't ready to let go. Emily urged her to fight. "You've spent your life doing what's expected," she said, her eyes blazing. "Now do what's right." Claire nodded, but fear gnawed at her. She thought of her daughters, of the home they'd lose if she couldn't pay the mortgage, of the community that had once embraced her but now turned away. That night, Claire sat with Sophie and Mia, seeking their strength. "You taught us to stand up for what's right," Sophie said, her voice steady. "Now it's your turn." Mia, ever practical, added, "We'll figure it out, Mom. We always do." Their faith in her was a fire, burning away her doubts. Claire decided to fight. She contacted a lawyer, a friend of Emily's who specialized in discrimination cases. Together they built a case, gathering testimonials from students, colleagues, even parents who believed in her. The process was grueling, each day a battle against fear and uncertainty. But Claire felt alive, her purpose clear. She wasn't just fighting for her job, she was fighting for her truth. As the hearing approached, Claire and Emily grew closer, their bond a refuge from the storm. They spent evenings cooking together, laughing over burnt pasta, dreaming of a future where they could simply be. Claire began to see a life beyond the one she'd lost, a life where she could be whole. The hearing was set for a crisp April morning, the kind of day that promised renewal but felt heavy with judgment. Claire stood outside the school board office, her hands trembling, Emily at her side. Inside, a room full of strangers would decide her fate. She'd spent weeks preparing, but nothing could quiet the voice in her head whispering, "What if you lose everything?" The room was packed, parents, teachers, community members, their faces a mix of curiosity and hostility. Claire's lawyer, Sarah, was a sharp woman in her 30s, her confidence a stark contrast to Claire's nerves. "You've got this," Sarah whispered as they took their seats. Claire nodded, but her heart pounded like a drum. The board presented their case first, vague complaints about disruption and community standards. Claire's stomach twisted as a parent stood to speak, her voice dripping with disdain. "We trusted Mrs. Thompson with our children," she said. "How can we now, knowing she's like this?" The words stung, but Claire kept her eyes forward, refusing to let them see her break. Then it was her turn. Sarah called witnesses, students who spoke of Claire's kindness, colleagues who praised her dedication. Lily, the quiet student from her class, stood and said, "Mrs. Thompson taught me to believe in myself. She deserves to stay." Claire's eyes burned with tears, but she held them back. When Claire took the stand, her voice was steady, though her hands shook. "I've given 20 years to this school," she said. "I've loved every student, every lesson. My personal life doesn't change that. If anything, it makes me a better teacher, because I'm finally being honest." The room was silent, the weight of her words settling over the crowd. Emily squeezed her hand under the table, a silent "I'm here." Claire drew strength from it, from the memory of her daughter's support, from the life she was fighting for. The board deliberated for hours, each minute an eternity. When they returned, the chairwoman's face was unreadable. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, "your contract will be renewed. We find no basis for termination." Relief flooded Claire, so intense she nearly collapsed. Emily pulled her into a hug, whispering, "You did it." But the victory was bittersweet. Some parents pulled their children from her classes, and the whispers didn't stop. Claire knew this was only the beginning. Back at school, Claire threw herself into her work with renewed passion. She started an after-school book club, focusing on stories of identity and resilience. Students flocked to it, some curious, others seeking a safe space. Claire saw herself in them. The ones who felt different, who didn't know how to say it. She listened, she guided, she loved them fiercely. Emily too found her place. Her art classes became a haven for students who felt out of place. Her classroom a riot of color and acceptance. She and Claire began to dream bigger. Maybe a community art project, maybe a life together beyond the school's walls. But doubt lingered. Claire worried about the future, about the cost of being seen. One night, over dinner at Emily's apartment, Claire voiced her fears. "What if this is too hard?" she asked, her voice small. "What if I'm not strong enough?" Emily took her hand, her eyes fierce. "You're stronger than you know," she said. "And we're in this together." Claire nodded, her heart settling. Together was a word she could hold on to. Sophie and Mia continued to be her rock. Sophie, now interning at a research lab called Weekly, her voice full of pride. Mia, preparing for college, started writing essays about her mother's courage, her words raw and powerful. Claire read them and wept, not from sadness, but from the realization that her truth had given her daughter strength too. But the town wasn't done with its judgment. A local church group organized a protest outside the school, their signs sharp with condemnation. Claire walked past them each morning, her head high, but the weight was heavy. Emily, ever defiant, painted a mural on the school's exterior. A vibrant explosion of color with the words "Love is love" hidden in the brushstrokes. It sparked controversy, but it also sparked hope. Claire began to see the ripples of her courage. Students came out to her, their voices trembling but brave. Parents, some hesitant, others tearful, thanked her for showing their children they could be themselves. Claire realized she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for them. As summer approached, Claire and Emily planned a trip to the coast, a chance to escape the noise. They rented a small cottage by the sea, where they walked hand in hand, the waves drowning out the world. Claire felt free, her heart full in a way she'd never known. She looked at Emily, her auburn hair glowing in the sunset, and knew this was worth every battle. But the battles weren't over. Back home, a new petition circulated, demanding Emily's mural be removed. Claire's heart sank, but she wasn't surprised. Change was slow and resistance was loud. She and Emily sat together, planning their next move, their hands intertwined. They weren't just fighting for a mural. They were fighting for a future where love didn't have to hide. The petition to remove Emily's mural gained traction, fueled by a vocal minority. By late summer, the school board scheduled another meeting, this time to address public art standards. Claire knew it was a thinly veiled attack on their relationship, on their visibility. She felt the familiar knot of fear in her stomach, but this time it was mixed with defiance. Emily, however, was unshaken. "Let them try," she said, her eyes flashing. "That mural's for the kids who need to see it." Claire admired her fire but worried about the cost. They'd already faced so much. Could they keep fighting? Emily seemed to sense her doubt. That night, she pulled Claire close and whispered, "We're not just fighting for us. We're fighting for everyone who's afraid to be seen." The community response was divided. Some parents rallied behind the mural, organizing a counter-petition that gained hundreds of signatures. Students too spoke up, creating social media campaigns with hashtags like "Keep the Mural" and "Love is Love." Claire was stunned by the support, but the opposition was louder, their signs outside the school growing bolder. "Protect our values. Think of the children." Claire's daughters stepped in again. Sophie, home for the summer, designed flyers defending the mural, her biology background giving her arguments a sharp, logical edge. Mia, now a high school graduate, spoke at a community forum, her voice steady despite the hecklers. "My mom's a better teacher because she's honest," she said. "And that mural makes kids like me feel safe." Claire watched, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. The night before the board meeting, Claire couldn't sleep. She sat on her porch staring at the stars, her mind racing. Emily joined her, wrapping a blanket around them both. "Whatever happens," Emily said, "we've already won. We're here. We're together." Claire leaned into her, the warmth of her presence grounding her. She thought of her old life, the one where she'd hidden her heart, and knew she'd never go back. The meeting was chaos. The room overflowed with supporters and detractors, their voices clashing before the board even spoke. Sarah, Claire's lawyer, presented a case for the mural, citing freedom of expression and the school's diversity policy. Emily spoke too, her voice steady but passionate. "This mural isn't about me," she said. "It's about every kid who feels invisible. Let them know they're seen." The board deliberated late into the night. Claire and Emily waited in the hallway, their hands clasped, their nerves raw. When the decision came, it was a compromise. The mural could stay, but controversial elements, the hidden "love is love," had to be painted over. Emily's face fell, but Claire squeezed her hand. "It's still there," she whispered. "They can't erase what it means." The compromise stung, but it was a victory. The mural remained, a beacon for those who needed it. Claire and Emily celebrated quietly, cooking dinner together, their laughter filling the apartment. They were learning to find joy in the small wins, to hold on to each other through the losses. As fall approached, Claire prepared for a new school year. She redesigned her curriculum, weaving in stories of resilience and identity, books like Fun Home and Stone Butch Blues. Her students responded with a hunger she hadn't expected, their discussions raw and honest. One student, a shy boy named Marcus, came out to her after class, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't think I could tell anyone," he said. Claire hugged him, her heart breaking and healing at once. Emily, too, was transforming her classroom. She started a mentorship program for young artists, encouraging them to explore their identities through their work. Her students painted murals of their own, small acts of rebellion and hope. Claire watched, amazed by the woman she loved, by the impact they were having together. But the personal toll was real. Claire's relationship with Tom remained strained. They spoke only about logistics, divorce papers, shared custody of Mia's college fund. Tom was civil but distant, his hurt a wall between them. Claire grieved the loss of their friendship, but she knew she'd made the right choice. Sophie and Mia continued to thrive, their support unwavering. Sophie began dating a woman at college, her own journey mirroring Claire's in ways that made them both laugh and cry. Mia, accepted to a college in New York, promised to visit often, her rainbow pin still proudly displayed. Claire and Emily began to dream of a future beyond the town's judgment. They talked of moving to a bigger city, maybe Richmond or DC, where they could live more openly. But for now they stayed, rooted by their students, by the community they were building. Claire realized that her fear, once a suffocating force, had become a fire, fueling her to keep going. One crisp October evening, Claire and Emily attended a local Pride event, their first public appearance as a couple. Claire hesitated at first, her old instincts screaming to hide. But Emily's hand in hers was steady, and the crowd's warmth enveloped them. They danced under string lights, surrounded by others who'd fought their own battles, and Claire felt a joy so pure it hurt. The night ended with a promise. As they walked home, Emily stopped under a streetlight and said, "I want to build a life with you, Claire. All of it." Claire's breath caught, her heart full. "Me too," she said, and they kissed, the world fading away. The Pride event marked a turning point. Claire felt bolder, her fear giving way to a quiet strength. But the world wasn't done challenging her. A week later, a local newspaper published an op-ed accusing Lincoln High of promoting an agenda through Claire and Emily's presence. The piece was vicious, naming them both, questioning their influence on students. Claire's stomach dropped as she read it, her hands shaking. Emily, ever resilient, tossed the paper aside. "Let them talk," she said. "We're not going anywhere." But the article stirred up trouble. Angry emails flooded Claire's inbox, and a few parents confronted her at school, their voices sharp with judgment. One mother, whose son was in Claire's class, demanded a meeting with the principal. "I don't want my child taught by someone living in sin," she said. The principal, a weary man nearing retirement, defended Claire but looked exhausted. "Just keep your head down," he advised. Claire nodded, but inside she was raging. Emily suggested they respond with action, not words. They organized a community art show, inviting students, parents, and locals to contribute. The theme was identity, and the response was overwhelming. Students painted portraits of their families, their struggles, their dreams. Parents, even some who'd opposed the mural, submitted pieces, drawn by the chance to be heard. Claire and Emily worked late into the night, hanging artwork, their hands brushing as they laughed over crooked frames. The show was a success. The gym transformed into a gallery, buzzed with energy. Claire watched as a father, who'd once signed the petition against the mural, studied his daughter's painting, a vibrant depiction of her two dads. He turned to Claire, his eyes soft. "I didn't get it before," he said. "I'm starting to." Claire smiled, her heart full, and realized change was possible, one heart at a time. But the victories were hard-won. Claire's divorce finalized, leaving her with half the savings and a house she could barely afford. She and Tom met to sign the papers, their interaction polite but hollow. "I hope you're happy," Tom said, his voice flat. Claire nodded, her throat tight. "I'm trying," she said. It was the truth. Sophie and Mia helped ease the financial strain. Sophie took a part-time job at her lab, sending money home when she could. Mia, now in New York, started a crowdfunding page for her mom, calling it Support Ms. Thompson's Classroom. Claire was mortified at first, but the donations poured in, small amounts from students, larger ones from parents who'd seen her fight. It wasn't enough to erase the worry, but it was enough to keep going. Emily too faced challenges. Her ex-girlfriend from Seattle reappeared, sending long, emotional emails about regret and second chances. Emily shared them with Claire, her honesty a bomb. "I don't want that life," she said, her eyes locked on Claire's. "I want this one." Claire kissed her, the doubt melting away, and knew they were building something real. Their relationship wasn't perfect. Claire's fear of judgment sometimes made her pull back, hesitating to hold Emily's hand in public. Emily, impatient with Claire's caution, pushed her to be braver. They argued, their voices sharp, but always found their way back. One night after a fight, Emily painted Claire a small canvas, a single sunflower bold against a stormy sky. "This is you," she said. "Strong even in the chaos." Claire cried, holding her close, and knew she'd never let go. At school, Claire's book club grew, becoming a safe space for students like Marcus, who was navigating his own coming out. Claire listened, her heart breaking for the fear he carried, but also swelling with pride at his courage. She saw Emily in him, in the way he held his head high despite the whispers. Together, she and Emily started a GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, a small but fierce group that met weekly to talk, laugh, and heal. The GSA caught the attention of the local news, this time in a positive light. A reporter interviewed Claire and Emily, framing them as advocates for inclusion. The story went viral, drawing support from across the state. Claire was stunned by the messages. Parents thanking her, students sharing their stories, strangers offering hope. But it also drew hate. Anonymous letters arrived, their words venomous, and Claire's car was keyed one night, the scratches jagged and cruel. Emily refused to let it break them. She painted over the scratches with bright, swirling designs, turning the damage into art. "They don't get to define us," she said, her voice fierce. Claire nodded, her resolve hardening. She was done hiding. As winter settled in, Claire and Emily planned their first holiday together. They invited Sophie and Mia, who insisted on cooking a chaotic, laughter-filled Thanksgiving dinner. The table was crowded with mismatched dishes, the air warm with love. Claire looked at her daughters, at Emily, and felt a peace she hadn't known was possible. This was her family, messy and real. But the peace was fragile. A new threat loomed, a state bill targeting controversial school programs, including GSAs. Claire and Emily attended a town hall, their hands clasped, their voices steady as they spoke against it. The room was divided, but Claire saw familiar faces. Students, parents, colleagues who stood with them. She realized they weren't alone. The fight was far from over, but Claire felt ready. She'd lost parts of her old life, but she'd gained so much more. A love that lit her up, daughters who made her proud, a community that was slowly changing. She looked at Emily, her anchor, her fire, and knew they'd face whatever came next together. The state bill gained momentum, its supporters framing it as protecting children. Claire and Emily knew it was a direct attack on their GSA, on their visibility, on their right to exist. They organized, rallying students, parents, and allies to attend hearings and write letters. Claire, once terrified of speaking out, found her voice. At a state capitol rally, she stood before a crowd, her hands steady, and said, "Love isn't a threat. Fear is." The applause was deafening, but so were the jeers. Back home, the school year was winding down. Claire's classroom felt like a sanctuary, her students a reminder of why she fought. Marcus, now openly gay, painted a portrait for the GSA's end-of-year showcase. A bold, colorful depiction of a heartbreaking free from chains. Claire hung it in her classroom, a quiet act of defiance. Emily's mentorship program flourished, her students' artwork gaining attention beyond the town. A gallery in Richmond offered to host a show, and Emily invited Claire to co-curate. They spent weekends planning, their laughter filling Emily's apartment as they debated layouts and themes. Claire felt alive, her heart full in a way she'd never known. But the bill loomed, its passage a real possibility. Claire and Emily attended every hearing, their presence a statement. They met other activists, queer couples, parents of trans kids, teachers like them, who became their community. Claire realized she wasn't just fighting for herself, but for a world where no one had to hide. Sophie and Mia remained her strength. Sophie, now a junior, joined a campus queer alliance, her activism inspired by her mother. Mia, thriving in New York, sent Claire weekly texts filled with memes and encouragement. "You're a badass, Mom," she wrote, and Claire laughed, her heart warm. Tom reached out unexpectedly, asking to meet. Claire hesitated but agreed, curious. They met at a coffee shop, the air heavy with their shared history. Tom looked older, his eyes tired but kind. "I've been thinking," he said. "I was angry for a long time, but I see how happy you are." "I'm glad." Claire's throat tightened. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was peace. The holidays brought new challenges. Claire and Emily hosted a Christmas party for the GSA, filling their home with laughter and music. But outside, the protests continued, their signs sharper, their voices louder. Claire's car was vandalized again, this time with slurs scratched into the paint. Emily, furious, wanted to confront the culprits, but Claire held her back. "They want us to break," she said. "We won't." Instead, they channeled their anger into action. Emily painted a new mural, this one on a community center wall, with the GSA's help. It was a vibrant tapestry of faces, students, teachers, families, woven together with the words, "We are enough." The town buzzed, some with outrage, others with awe. Claire stood before it, her hand in Emily's, and felt a surge of pride. The bill's vote was set for spring. Claire and Emily prepared for the worst, their lawyer Sarah strategizing tirelessly. They spoke at rallies, their voices hoarse but unwavering. Claire's students joined them, their signs bold. "Let teachers teach. Love wins." Claire looked at them, her heart swelling, and knew they were changing the world. At home, Claire and Emily found solace in the small moments. Cooking breakfast, watching old movies, dreaming of a future where they could just be. Claire began writing, a memoir of her journey, her words raw and honest. Emily read the drafts, her feedback gentle but sharp, and Claire felt seen in a way she never had. One night, as snow fell outside, Emily proposed. Not with a ring but with a painting, a small canvas of two figures under a starry sky, their hands intertwined. "Marry me," she said, her voice soft but sure. Claire's breath caught, her eyes filling with tears. Yes, she whispered, and they kissed, the world falling away. The engagement was their secret, a quiet promise in a noisy world. They told Sophie and Mia first, who screamed with joy, planning a celebration over spring break. Claire felt a joy so deep it ached, but also a fear. What would marriage mean in a town that still judged them? She pushed the thought aside, focusing on Emily's smile, on the life they were building. As spring approached, the Bills' fate hung in the balance. Claire and Emily stood together, their hands clasped, their hearts steady. They'd faced so much loss, judgment, fear. But they'd also found love, community, purpose. Claire looked at Emily, her anchor, her fire, and knew they'd keep fighting, no matter what came next. Spring arrived, and with it the vote on the state bill. Claire and Emily sat in the Capitol gallery, surrounded by allies, their hands clasped so tightly their knuckles were white. The debate was brutal, voices clashing over family values and children's safety. Claire's heart pounded, but she felt Emily's steady presence, a reminder of what they were fighting for. When the vote came, it was close, too close. The bill failed by a single vote, a victory that felt like a miracle. The gallery erupted in cheers, strangers hugging, tears flowing. Claire turned to Emily, her voice breaking. "We did it," she said. Emily kissed her, right there in the chaos, and for once Claire didn't care who saw. The victory was a turning point. The GSA grew, its meetings packed with students who felt safer, braver. Claire's classroom became a haven, her lessons a lifeline for kids navigating their own truths. Emily's murals multiplied, each one a bold statement of love and resilience. The community centerpiece became a local landmark, drawing visitors who left notes of gratitude at its base. Claire's memoir took shape, her words a testament to her journey. She wrote of fear, of love, of finding herself at 47. Emily designed the cover, a simple sketch of two hands intertwined, and Claire knew it was perfect. Publishers showed interest, and Claire felt a flicker of hope that her story could reach others. Sophie and Mia planned the engagement party, a small gathering in Emily's apartment. The room was filled with laughter, music, and the people who'd become their family. Students, colleagues, activists. Sophie gave a toast, her voice steady. "To Mom and Emily," she said, "for showing us what courage looks like." Mia, ever cheeky, added, "and for giving me an excuse to eat cake." Claire laughed, her heart full, and pulled her daughters close. Tom attended, a quiet gesture of support. He brought a bottle of wine, his smile hesitant but genuine. "You look happy," he said to Claire, and she nodded, her eyes soft. "I am," she said. It was a moment of closure, a bridge to a new kind of family. The school year ended with a celebration, the GSA's first Pride Festival, held on the school lawn. Students painted banners, played music, and shared stories. Claire and Emily stood together, watching kids who'd once been afraid now dancing freely. Marcus, now a senior, gave a speech, his voice strong. "This is home," he said, and Claire's eyes filled with tears. The town was changing slowly. Some parents still glared, some churches still preached against them, but others opened their doors. A local pastor invited Claire to speak. Her words met with quiet nods instead of judgment. Claire realized that change wasn't loud. It was the small moments, the hearts that softened, the hands that reached out. Claire and Emily married in a quiet ceremony on the coast, surrounded by their daughters and closest friends. Claire wore a simple dress, Emily a tailored suit, their vows raw and honest. "You made me brave," Claire said, her voice trembling. Emily smiled, her eyes bright. "You were always brave." They kissed as the waves crashed, their love a promise that needed no permission. Back home, Claire faced the new school year with a fire she'd never known. She and Emily moved in together, their home a blend of books and canvases, chaos and love. The whispers hadn't stopped, but they were quieter now, drowned out by the voices of those who stood with them. Claire's memoir was published, its release small but meaningful. She received letters from readers, women her age, kids like Marcus, strangers who'd found courage in her story. One letter from a teacher in Ohio read, "You gave me hope I could be myself." Claire framed it, a reminder of why she'd fought. The future wasn't certain. New bills would come, new battles. But Claire wasn't afraid anymore. She had Emily, her daughters, her students, her truth. She'd lost a life she thought she wanted, but she'd gained one she'd never dreamed possible. On a quiet evening, Claire and Emily sat on their porch watching the sunset. Emily's hand rested in hers, their rings glinting in the light. "Worth it?" Emily asked, her voice teasing but soft. Claire smiled, her heart steady. "Every second," she said. And as the stars emerged, Claire knew she'd found her home. Not in a place, but in a love that had set her free.